Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session, Ophthalmology 360, where we have an elite panel of speakers talking about various different topics in ophthalmology. I have with me Professor Tithyal sir, who is the director of the RP Center, and I also have Dr. Saikumar, who is the past president of KSOS. So we'll go on to the first talk, which is by Dr. R.D. Ravindran, ensuring patient safety in ophthalmic practice. Over to you, sir.
So good morning, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity to speak about the patient safety. This is an important area, but it's something which is not really covered in our scientific sessions or in talks. So if you look at the quality perspective, if you ask the doctors what the quality means in their practice, they'll always probably talk about how do we minimize complication and ensure good outcomes, and also use the best-in-class technology and the recent new techniques for giving the best outcomes. And from the patient perspective, they look at reliable services, they look at appropriate cost, transparency, and how they really treated during the whole course of the treatment. This is what their concern is. And nobody has got the safety issues in mind. But if you look at, there are a few publications in this area. There was one major publication in the year 2007 called Surgical Confusions in Ophthalmology, where they list the common adverse events like wrong lens implant, wrong eye surgery, wrong eye block, wrong procedures, in wrong corneal implant in almost 1 in 15,000 patients. This is the data from 900,000 consecutive surgeries done in New York eye hospitals. You have to understand these are all a large number of eye hospitals where the volume is not very high. The volumes are reasonably low, and in spite of that, the incidence is 1 in 15,000 procedures. And these are all which ended up in a medical legal case. There are also cases which may not be here, which have not been gone into the court or been challenged. And they say that safety protocols, if they followed, if you have a safety protocol and if you follow it, you could have avoided this error in nearly 85% of the patients. And today the modern healthcare is very, very complex. Earlier we had one disease had one kind of a treatment. Today there are several treatment options. For each option, there are also different technologies available. For if you take cataract surgery, we have 3 or 4 surgical options. We have 10 to 20 different type of intraocular lenses. We also tell the patient what the cost difference, what is the advantage, and we really convince the patient for a particular eye oil. The power also varies from -10 diopter to 30 diopter. All of this makes eye care very error prone. In addition, we also have a large number of vulnerable patients who are bilaterally blind, hard of hearing, dementia, who cannot really understand. If somebody gives a block in the wrong eye, they may not even protest in this group of patients. So all of that makes the whole thing very vulnerable. And recently there was again a paper in 2018 which looked at all the incorrect surgical procedures across all specialties. So they looked at a large volume, about 32 lakh surgeries in all specialties happened in 130 hospitals over an 8-year period. What they found was, maybe shocking to some of you, they found about 277 safety errors and another 200 near misses, if not been picked up because of the protocol, would have ended up making this number to nearly 500. And if you see, they have operated on about 90 patients on the wrong side, and wrong implant was used in about 86, and they operated on the wrong side, like a wrong teeth or a wrong vertebra in nearly about 65 patients. And if you look at them, they've listed all the specialties. No specialty is immune to this. But what is interesting is ophthalmology comes on the top. Okay? And while the average error is 1 per 20,000, ophthalmology it's about 1 in 10,000. So we all have to be really sensitive to this, because eye is a bilateral organ. This error can happen. And again, if you use a protocol, and probably could have avoided here in this cases in nearly about 30% of the patients. Let's see how these errors happen. For example, this is a patient who needed a left eye cataract surgery. Everything was done accordingly for this patient. This is a patient which happened in our hospital where the patient, we used to put a wristband on the left side, and there is a way to document this left eye surgery in multiple documents. But when the doctor was preparing for the patient, the doctor checked everything, identified the left eye, but came and gave the block in the opposite eye. Okay, this is what we call as an acute failure. Okay, so this is not, nothing was wrong before to make the doctor to commit the mistake, but still, when he performed the procedure, he did that on the wrong side. So, but this is because of a person, but majority of the errors do not result from individual recklessness or the action of a particular group of people, but it's usually a system-based error where it is because of faulty systems, processes and conditions that lead to the people who perform the procedure wrongly. So to give you an example, so this is a patient who needed advised surgery, right eye DCR, but when the admission staff entered that patient, admitted as left eye surgery. Okay, so as a result, everything was generated for the left eye. This transcription error, if it has not been picked up, okay, and if they just go only by those records without going into the details of the case record, or there is no mechanism to check what this admission person has done, then probably you'll end up in an error. So this is the way commonly happens. Nearly about 80% of the errors happen because of a system-based failure. Here, somebody had created an error which probably the surgeon ended up doing it. So what I've just shared with you what can be done to minimize these errors and improve safety. The foremost important thing is how do we create awareness about safety in our team. So today we are not alone. Each ophthalmologist has got a practice, they allow about 8 to 10 staff. Everybody needs to be aware of the safety protocols. It's very important. And again, they have to really understand what quality means. So now if you look at this pyramid, which is put forth by the Institute of Medicine, the safety forms the bottom of the pyramid, and which is about not doing any harm, operating on the correct patient, correct site and correct treatment. So this is now clarifying our staff what safety means is very, very important. And again, a culture of reporting, empowering our staff to report any deviation, anything that happens, if they can report, it's very important. Only if you are able to openly share what goes wrong in our hospital, and if you are able to do a root cause analysis to understand why something goes wrong, then only we'll be able to provide an error-free processes in our hospital. So this is second important principle, open reporting. And you can create a simple form like this, that today we have a little very complex online form, but you can also use a paper form to report this. And again, clarifying the goals. So we have clarified what are all the goals. So you see the one on the top is all for the inpatients. Okay, it's about operating on the correct patient, correct eye, correct procedure, correct IOL. How do we minimize infections and systemic emergencies, and also minimize the complications. And similarly, there are also outpatient-based goals we have. So having defining these goals is also very important. Again, we also have to understand the safety incidents which happen in my hospital may be different from what in your hospital, because all of that is related to the work process. So, for example, if you take a patient flow, the operation theater, you should be able to chart how the whole patient flow happens in your setup, in your clinic or in your hospital. If you are able to chart what the patient flow is, then you can also say what can go wrong in each of these steps. What kind of a thing can go wrong in each of these steps of the patient flow. And once you have that, then you also decide upon what are the safety goals you want to have, so that this error cannot happen. So you list out, this will be different from OPD, this will be different for refraction, this will be different for biometry or counseling. In each area, the safety goals will differ, but in the operating room, these are all the goals. And how do we ensure these goals happen at each point of time? Like, what is the protocol you will have for identifying a patient? So in our hospital, we use an ID card to make sure that, the card, the record on which we are entering the data belongs to that patient. We identify using the patient's ID card. In the inpatient, we use a wristband where the patient's medical record number is there. And for surgery, we make it a mandate, every patient should have their correct eye marked, that also in the ward in front of the patient's relative. And again, we also, if you see, there are multiple case sheets. This is an A-scan record, this is a consent form, this is a counseling record, This is again another consent form, this inpatient record, and there is a surgery record. All of these records have to belong to the patient. There are chances that you may mix up the one patient's record with another patient record, one patient's investigation with another patient's investigation. So somebody have to really make sure that all the records belong to the same patient. Then you also need to decide where you will do all this verification, which are all the time points. I may have different stations at which we will do, and your hospital can have. And as you do, you also need to have a checklist, a safety checklist, which we'll use at each of these points to make sure that that everything is all right. And again, a timeout in the OT. As you start the surgery, and again, I showed you the data on ophthalmology being the highest, the majority of the errors happened with IOL implant. So it's always better to have a timeout just before implanting the IOL to make sure that the IOL you are going to implant is what is there for that particular patient. And again, constant redesigning is very important. Now, because the wrong eye block used to be a problem, we used to use the double marking. Then later, we made sure the staff stand with the patient so that the doctor will not make that mistake. And again, we also have been using constantly the technology. We have an EMR. So in the EMR, now only when you put 3 digits which of the ID card, which is only available only with the patient, the record will open. And again, when a doctor advises the surgery, it will always ask whether it is the correct eye. And there is a way today, we can check by scanning the case sheet, and we will be able to match the IOL power. And otherwise, you won't be able to dispense. And again, the whole thing has to be shared. It cannot be just only driven by the senior leaders, but several people have to be involved. Just to conclude, even in a low volume, this is from a Rotterdam Eye Hospital. So as you can see, there are multiple errors. They had wrong site, wrong surgeries. But once they were able to institute a safety protocols, these numbers have came down, but the near misses really increased. Because they had a good protocol, they were able to prevent all of that. And again, just to conclude, eye being a bilateral organ, and again, ours is a high volume specialty, and because we have multiple treatment options and multiple measurements and a high number of vulnerable patients, we need to really ensure that the safety is given importance. So as a doctor, as an ophthalmologist, as a leader of your practice, you have to identify areas where it can happen, understand really how they happen, can you reduce the complexity and develop reliable processes, and also need to create independent checks and create a culture of safety, you being a role model and creating teams that can work as a role model. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it was beautifully presented. I think safety is a very important aspect for all of us. In every field, we have to have a safety for not only for us, for patients, for the system. And the system has to be made in such a manner which takes care of all the safety guidelines. I think Adi really presented beautifully the entire thing, and we know that Arvind will have the best safety system placed for our patient care wise. And we do mistakes. Every year we have mistakes, and place like ours, AIMS, we do a lot of mistakes because we have such a system and residency program going on. Despite that, we like to put all the safety regulation guidelines. I think one important thing he highlighted was a multi-step check should be there in all of these cases. I think in a year we get almost 10 to 15 medical legal cases to handle all these areas. And rightly pointed out, one is the other eye, wrong eye operated. That is one common thing which people don't really tolerate. Second is the improper IOL power calculation or wrong IOL put in a case, which happens very, very often. I think these are two important things. And other thing which I think I would like to highlight for younger people also, especially those cases where you are taking the biopsy, you are taking the tissue out, like doing an enucleation, evisceration, biopsy, that has to be done very, very meticulously. Because once you remove the eye, you can't replace that. And we have had cases with the wrong diagnosis of a tumor. You have enucleated the other eye, or you enucleated the eye which had a diagnosis of a malignancy but turned out to be non-malignant tumor. So those are an important aspects we need to check. I think you beautifully described the entire thing.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Just one interesting thing that I would like to share which happened in our hospital. in a busy OPD, the printer is outside. So you print the spectacle report and it is given from the staff, and it was wrong. Patient was given of somebody else's was given. Patient didn't notice, went to an optical shop. Some smart guy in the optical shop picked it up and came back to us and said. Similarly, another problem that we are now having is the old physical records are now being scanned and made into EMR. So there some wrong patient's OCT or wrong patient's reports go into one patient's reports goes into somebody else's EMR. So that is something that we are closely looking at now. So just a few interesting things I wanted to share.
I think just one thing for EMR, electronic record keeping has to be made in a manner which doesn't get destroyed or it doesn't get infected. You all must be knowing for last 2 days, entire AIMS is almost closed because all electronic thing have been hacked by the international agency. Must be some terrorist attack because we have a lot of high-profile patients also. So we are struggling to come back to normalcy for last 3 days now. So that part has also been looked into.
Sir, can you give a mic to sir, please?
The point you made about printer is very important. So this mistake, when it happens is that if you shut down the printer by switching off the main. Now, if there is a properly, if the computer is shut down and then, you follow a protocol of switching down the printer, then this would not happen. Otherwise, what happens is the next day when you switch on the printer, when you take the first printout, the last patient printout will come. So this has happened in at least 2 of our patients where the A-scan person did not shut it down. Next day, they did a A-scan for a patient. When they took a printout, the previous day's patient's printer came. So that's very important that you follow the protocols, especially with electronic equipment. You have to be correct with the systems and processes.
Thank you so much, sir. We move on to the next talk by Dr. Arvind Moria. Smartphone-based annotation tool for faster and accurate image labeling, AI in common retinal disorders. Over to you, Dr. Moria.
Good morning, all. And thank you, Dr. Arup, sir, Dr. Srini, Dr. Sujit, and Dr. Gopal S. Pillai for giving me the opportunity. So my talk is on the smartphone-based world's first annotation tool for faster and accurate image labeling for artificial intelligence for common retinal disorders. So as we all know that AI is the 4th industrial revolution in the history of the mankind, and technology has advanced dramatically in recent decades. The iPhone Apple is 1 million times powerful than all computers in NASA headquarters used in year 1985. 1 million times more powerful. And we can expect it to continue to advance at an accelerated rate in the years to come. So what is AI? It is the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer programs. It is related to the similar task of using computers to understand human intelligence. But AI does not have to confine itself to methods that are biologically observable. And the subset of AI is machine learning. It is an application of AI that enables systems to learn and improve from experience without being explicitly programmed. And machine learning focuses on developing computer programs that can access data and use it to learn for themselves. In a match with the Garry Kasparov, he was the reigning world champion in chess. So he beat this IBM Deep Blue computer, supercomputer, in year 1996. But that Deep Blue came back hard in year 1997 and beaten Garry Kasparov in year 1997. So that was the dawn of artificial intelligence all over the world. So this is how this training system goes on for the machine learning that we use in the ophthalmology department. So first is the digitalization through the EMR that sir has very in a illustrated way he has mentioned that. Then the identification of the clinical parameters is there, and then the development of the machine learning algorithm is there, and then it is integrated on machine learning model into the EMR system, and then it quantifies the uses, and then there is clinical validation. Validation is the most important part in medical field, and if required, retraining needs to be given. So the deep learning and the AI have become widespread because of the availability of digital data in the medical field. Supervised learning algorithms have shown human level performance, and to get huge data set with good quality control, there is a need of an annotation tool with a customizable feature set. So this multicentric study evaluated the viability of having an in-house annotation tool which work on a smartphone and can be used in a healthcare setting. Supervised learning algorithms like the convolutional neural network have shown human level or better performance in radiology, ophthalmology, and in driving automated vehicles, but requires huge amount of labeled or annotated data, high variance if the grader is a fresher or an expert. And various annotation tools are available like the label box supervisedly and the labeling desktop graphic user interface. But they have many disadvantages of not being mobile. Progress of graders can't be supervised, loss of data because of hardware issue, no data exchange for offline mode, and loss of annotations because of the poor network, especially in the periphery. So millions and millions of people are affected by the diabetic retinopathy and other retinal disorders, so they require better screening for the early prevention to evaluate the risk, especially in the remotest of the areas. So the objective of this tool were to quantify the amount of damage already done, then the segmentation of the various retinal lesions. At present, IDX-DR by M. Abramoff is the only US FDA approved AI-based equipment for the referral system of diabetic patients. So we followed the ICDR severity disease scale for quantifying the lesions of diabetic retinopathy, and we followed the binary module based on CNN, a deep learning algorithm for the other referable and non-referable retinal disease. How it all begins, so 32 retinal specialists and 8 IIT engineers and other supporting staff, a team of 50 started with an online tool label box for labeling of publicly available data set to evaluate the need of a custom tool. There were many advantages. We were able to grade multiple retinal images easily in a short span of time. It was very user-friendly tool using user interface and user feedback. It was integrated with advanced testing and internal validation sets. It was faster and mobile. Progress tracking was there, and domain expert feedback was available for the graphic user interface. It has many special features of zoom capacity of 3 options, green channel for the red-free image of 24-bit, and there was this brightness and contrast slider to make ungradable images to gradable. And we followed the smart image preloading system, that is a WebP. It maintains resolution of images by keeping low memory footprints. So this is a small video. So we developed our own in-house image annotation tool. As seen in the video, adding in annotations for an image is pretty easy. View the image, magnify it, change the brightness, change the contrast as needed, click on the relevant option, choose the extra details, and the annotation is saved. The analytics on the landing page shows the pending and the completed images. The graph shows the maximum number of images stacked by the other users in real time and gave the daily target settings. These imaging data sets are generally in the range of thousands and can be overwhelming for a single surgeon. So we chunk them into sets, each containing 1000 images or less, which a grader can complete within 2 weeks. The issues mentioned earlier were resolved as follows. For faster image loading, we resized images into smaller size thumbnails with a smaller memory footprint and is still maintaining the visual quality. We leveraged the asynchronous capability of the browser and didn't load just 1 but 3 images preemptively so that the grader doesn't need to wait for the next image to load. The initial interface was basic and evolved based on the grader feedback. It is now designed on a decision tree structure to render the nested subclassification and extra options. So we have seen a total behavioral change, where on the online tools the grader used to work only on the weekends, but on our tool we have a logged usage on all days of the week. Average time taken to label a single image reduced substantially. We validated the AI algorithm developed using annotations on this tool on some new testing data sets and found them to have a really high performance score. So this strengthens our hypothesis that this tool is no different than the desktop-based tools and with added benefits of being portable and flexible. So we wish to introduce more gamification, label optimization to be used in telemedicine. So this is how an image is feed in this, and it takes a decision whether this patient needs to be referred or not to be referred. So in conclusion, the user feedback and future user stats after evaluating over 2 lakhs of retinal images confirm our hypothesis with high sensitivity. Now we are able to develop an offline smartphone app which can diagnose patients of common retinal disease in less than 1 minute, 53 seconds to be precise, and very soon it will be available on Google Play Store. So this app will have a definite role in telemedicine and bridging gap between man and machine. And this app will surely transform patient management in near future. So this 5 years of hard work has been published in Clinical Ophthalmology. Thank you so very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Moria. That was a great insight into the world of AI and how it is going to transform the way we practice medicine. Can you just tell us what are the common retinal diseases that can be easily picked up, and other than diabetic retinopathy?
Hypertensive retinopathy, ARMD, glaucoma. There are a lot of biomarkers that it picks. So glaucoma also, except ROP, it can pick most of them.
Thank you.
Remedio is only for the diabetic retinopathy.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
But it is for all the common retinal disorders.
Great.
Yeah.
I want to make it clear. Thank you, Dr. Moria. We go on to the next talk by Dr. N.V. Shivan. Dr. Shivan is a senior ophthalmologist from Calicut. He's going to tell us strategies to make your optical shop more profitable, something which all the hospital owners, single hospital owners will be very keen to know.
All of us are super saturated with all topics in the ophthalmology in 2 days. So this is a topic which you can relax and can remember when you are starting a clinic or hospital or practice. At that time, this will be important. Some of the hospitals neglects this portion. That is why Dr. Srini included this. Thanks to Dr. Srini. At least a few of the hospital management neglect this part. Few interest third party. This talk includes some business part. I have no financial interest. We will see the scope of the optical outlet. The spectacle using population, teens nearly 22%, then young adults 26%, adult 25%, and older 45, seniors 41. Average it will come to 30 to 40%. I think it is more than that nowadays. In addition to this, a large number of people are using protective eyewear, sunglass, ARC, UV protection glasses, sports wear, contact lenses, cosmetic glasses. More than 50% of the people are changing glasses. 1 to 3 years period, average 2 years, most of the patients are changing glass. In Kerala, it is like that, I think. The patient turnover is very high. Most of the eye diseases are controlled. These diabetics and glaucoma and the spectacle using again increases. In this, life expectancy also increases the use of glass. The spectacle business can be done profitably. The formalities to start opticals. It is not like starting the pharmacy. Pharmacy, there are some specifications. Room size, some registered pharmacists must be there, and so many formalities are there. In this case, an ideal noticeable space must be there. Company registration, DNO registration, GST registration, PAN card, all these we can procure through agencies. Another risk factor we have to consider in this is the competition. While we are planning for a high hospital, 3 or 4 optical shops will be opening before opening the eye hospital in and around that hospital. This is a highly competitive field. Online business, lack of fundamental knowledge about the optical business for our doctors. Points to remember: optical sales business growth relies on quality customer service. IVR is notable aspect of individual life. IVR enhances eyesight and also style. The favoring things for us. We are the prescribing doctors. The customers are ours. We are examining. We have already made a rapport with these patients. So they will not go out if we have sufficient service. Customers believe you than business people. Only thing is to satisfy their need. Best customer service is important factor. Additional marketing ads are not required as in most of our opticals. Options. We must have a variety of glasses frames. Nowadays, the people are going in the Google search and finding out some types of frames, glass, etc. And we have to satisfy them also. All types of glass and variety of glass must be there in our stock. Cost must be reasonable. Style, fashion must be up to date. Keep quality, and also most important is ethics. No, don't go for commission or something like that. Warranty, there must be, the people are asking the color and breakage guarantee. Nowadays, the people are asking. So minimum 1 year guarantee. Most of the frames we are getting 1 year guarantee, breakage also. Timely supply of the article is important. We are asking them to come after 5 days, or we are giving a date for giving the spectacles. If there is, we are unable to supply that, we will lose that customer. So we have to remember all these things. Efficient operational team must be there. That is most important. The optical in charge must have some knowledge about in this field. Must have thorough knowledge about all types of glasses, frames, knowledge about optics. He must have a fundamental knowledge about refraction, refractive error, up-to-date knowledge about latest trends, and senior optometrist trained in the optical. We can entrust him as the in-charge person of an optical. Skin operation team must be there. Frame, different types of frames as per the periodical trends must be there. Perfect fitting quality must be there. Measuring, marking, fitting, etc. must be accurate. Very often we are getting the patients with alignment problem. And if there is any problem with this glass, we will lose that patient, because the hospital itself will lose the patient, because this hospital, they are not even writing a proper glass, they will say. Maybe the problem for the fitting. Accuracy in service is another point. SS categorize, understand, and need of the customer is very important. Very important. We have to understand what type of glass and frames are to be given to such and such patients. Working class people will be there, office going will be there, executives will be there, kids will be there, the children school going, and they will be finding his friend's frame or glass. They want that type of glass. So we understand them and supply such glass and satisfy the patient. Educated class of patients, we have to give high-end, educate them about high-end frames and glasses. Focus on need of the patient. Its accuracy after service also is very important. Then purchase. We must have some idea about the purchase of the frames and glass. We have to go to this wholesale purchase or even the production center, also you can go for that. Must be good quality for price, keep sufficient variety of stock, well trained personnel must be there. Then we can compare this with surgical or other income in the hospital. Once we had a training in the Aravind Eye Hospital, they proved that, some with the calculation, they proved that surgical income is equal to optical incomes. Surgery is the main income we are getting. Surgeon must have surgeon must very established, and it will take time. Risk factors are very high, and surgery requires huge infrastructure establishment, expensive, and recurrent expenses also is high. Well experienced team of staff must be there. Minimal faults will be counted much. Particular supervision of the business is important. Spectacle prescription routed only through the opticals, as we are doing here. Personal attention and frequent evaluation is important. With comfortable customers, optical outlets are easy to run, less risky comparing to surgery. Give equal importance to opticals and surgery portion. Never entrust third party to run the optical business. Initial stage of hospital, the break even, it is a term used here. Earlier it will be loss, then it will go for a break even stage, then we will go for a profit stage. Usually it is seen like that. Has a major role in this optical business, and eye clinic without optical outlets are at great loss. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivan sir, for that nice talk on opticals and how you can make a profitable business. And I'm surprised to know that the opticals generate as much income as surgeries. We now move on to the next talk by Dr. Kaushik. Network is your net worth, the power of collaboration. Dr. Kaushik Murli, please.
Thank you, sir. Once again, my gratitude to the organizing committee of KSOS for inviting me to share something very abstract about how it is important for us to network and collaborate being ophthalmologists. So I'm here to share some stories over the past couple of years that reiterate this fact. So I'm not very sure how many of you have seen this movie. It's called Terminal. It starred Tom Hanks and Catherine Zeta-Jones. The premise is very interesting. There's this gentleman, Victor, who travels from an East European country, lands up in JFK airport, and he's forbidden entry because the country has been taken over by a coup and US doesn't recognize the regime. So he's stuck, he can't enter America, he can't go back to his country because the borders are closed, because there's a war that is raging there. So until the entire situation gets sorted out, he is forced to live in the international transit section of JFK. Now, what does this have to do with ophthalmology? So, apart from my role as an ophthalmology, I've had the privilege of being associated with a social organization. This is a part of the Confederation of Indian Industry, a body called Young Indians, where we represent India at the G20 Young Entrepreneur Alliance. So last month there was a conference at Hamburg, and I was part of the India delegation, and the photo on top is something I'm very proud of, where we were able to felicitate the Indian ambassador to Germany. So it so happened that I was celebrating my 20th wedding anniversary, so decided that it is not smart to travel to Germany leaving the wife behind on the anniversary. So I invited her to come along, and on 31st we decided to go to Berlin. There was some goof up in our ticket, so we had to fly out the same night. So we caught a flight at Berlin. We had almost about 2.5 hours at Frankfurt airport, and we were supposed to fly back to Bangalore via Dubai. And then Murphy's Law kicked in. The flight into Berlin was 1 hour late. The loading staff in Berlin airport had finished their shift, so it took another half an hour. So 1.5 hours gone. I asked the aircrew whether they could allow us to disembark first. They said, no problem, sir. You have 1 hour, 10 minutes. You will make it. But we landed in Terminal 1. Emirates was Terminal 3. The SkyTrain in Frankfurt airport did not work, so we had to take a shuttle. The shuttle on the tarmac, we were not allowed, so we had to exit the building and come back in. So another 20 minutes gone, so we had about 35 minutes. The gate closes 20 minutes before departure. At the passport, my wife's passport did not scan. So there was a trainee passport in charge. She was entering data. We went through security, we reached the gate, and in classic movie style, the gates closed. And lo and behold, we were reliving terminal because both our visas had expired as of that night. It was a single entry Schengen visa that we got through a lot of struggle, and we had to spend the night at the airport. This is where the network kicked in. So here I am in the airport. Lufthansa says figure out with Emirates. Emirates says it's a side trip. We don't care. Our tickets for the next day, we don't know what to do. It's 2 o'clock Bangalore time. So I wake up my friend who did my travel arrangements and told him, boss, figure it out. He says, your ticket is suspended. Let me get it revoked. So he somehow figured and got us onto the next day morning flight on Emirates. We thought we were very smart because we did a through check on Lufthansa through Bangalore because they're part of the same consortium of airlines. And now I don't know whether my luggage is going to travel with me. So a very dear friend again is part of this Young Indians body, and he's part of the leadership team at Bangalore Airport. So shamelessly I reach out to him saying I'm stuck in Frankfurt, and then I give him the sob story of how I'm spending my wedding anniversary with my wife overnight in the airport with nobody else in the terminal. If you are stuck in a European airport in the night, it is very, very, very scary. Because we were two of us, and every half an hour there would be a cop who would come around, peep at us and go around. We were the only two people there. So he then kind of got involved. He got his operations in charge to speak to the Emirates guys in Bangalore Airport. And somewhere along the line, they then confirmed to us that the packages were loaded onto the same aircraft and we were coming back in. All this happened because of the friendship and the bonds that we had with all of them. So usually when we talk of networking, it almost appears as though it's very transactional. You're trying to network to get something. But by and large, when we talk of networking, it is your personal connects who provide you support, provide you feedback, insight, resources, and sometimes information that you cannot get out of public fora. So what essentially this is a learning is the importance of what we call a social capital. So it is goodwill and relationships. I think as doctors, we are privileged in that we can actually get a lot of goodwill simply because of connecting people, giving advice, guiding them as to where to get their medical care. And again, it is very critical for us to respect those who are at a very junior position. Again, we've had kids volunteer with us as high school students who today are CEOs of companies and have come back and supported us in a very large way in our CSR programs. So the junior, the intern who's with you, don't underestimate them. You don't know what is going to happen. The next example is a conversation that happened over LinkedIn. Unfortunately, again, most ophthalmologists are not on this professional platform. So this again, what I've shared is a screenshot of a conversation with Hema. Hema is a volunteer of the Shankar Eye Foundation in the US. And she read about some of the AI projects that we were doing, and she was curious to see whether we used any Intel infrastructure as a part of it, along with some Amazon Web Services. So these were all sitting on the cloud when we were working on it, and she said, let's see if we can promote Shankar Eye in some way. That conversation on LinkedIn triggered, we had a series of calls, and subsequently we ended up on this 75 at 75, which was a bringing together of 75 case studies that Government of India got out. And it was only because Intel leveraged their public relations that we got onto this particular platform. So it is very important for us to have an online presence and also network with people in our network who may not be directly connected to us. But again, you have no idea where that is going to help us. Usually when we talk of networking, people have this fascination of collecting visiting cards, attending high-profile events, and most of us think that it is a waste of time. I would rather do a cataract surgery. I would rather see 15 patients. Why should I do that? It sounds so fake for me to go shake hands with somebody who I know probably is not going to even respond to me. Why should I even do it? Am I using people? But end of the day, all of this is in terms of relationship building. So networking starts with our ability to give. And again, I reiterate, as doctors, we have this advantage of being able to give a lot more than what we get. How do you get about it? Well, you have to make a start somewhere. A lot of you have traveled to this conference. Again, networking is part of the agenda, so there is some work that you have to put, and it is a question of mindset. So at the banquet today evening, a lot of you may not like it because there's going to be loud music, there's probably going to be alcohol that makes you very uncomfortable. But rather than looking at it saying that, oh, I have to put up a show, so much of drama, I would rather go back to the room and sleep. it is a question of changing the mindset, saying, you know what, you never know. Maybe I will meet one person who's coming from some other place who's interesting, and probably there'll be some new experience, some story that I can go back home and tell my spouse or my child about. So the minute you flip your mindset, what is a problem actually becomes an opportunity. And the third thing is, as you grow up in your career as an ophthalmologist into a leadership position, it is important for you to reallocate tasks that frees up a lot of your free time. Because invariably you're doing stuff that somebody less capable could do, and it is in our desperation or in our inability to let go that you don't find time. So it is very easy for you to find time if you actually put your mind to it. It is proven professional networks leads to more job, business opportunities. It enables a lot of knowledge. It improves capacity. Through COVID, we used network. We interacted with people from TVS Motor Company to Titan to the Park Hotels to understand how they were responding to COVID, and we just mirrored some of those aspects as a part of our response at Shankara. It also increases the quality of work as well as job satisfaction if there is enough social networking happening within the organization. Otherwise, again, unfortunately, medical care is very, very hierarchical. We are very diffident to seniors. We are very scared to ask them whether we can have a cup of coffee with them. I think somewhere we have to let our students be shameless and reach out to us and engage with us a lot more. When you look at your own network, there are many, many people who are there. You need to identify people and understand strategically where you want 5, 10 years down the line. There will be people who are a burden, who annoy you, who make you feel very off. You need to back away from these people after just a polite hello, hi. And we need to diversify. Again, I would request you to experience this at the dinner today. 90% of people are going to go back to people who they've known probably from their childhood, if not from their college, or who have been their delegates. Nobody is going to try and attempt a conversation with one person that they don't know prior to today's evening. And I think that is important. So you're an outlier. So, but invariably that is what is going to happen. We love familiarity. We're very, very comfortable there. And it is critical for you to diversify so that you can subsequently capitalize it. Long story short, you need to make friends so that you have these friends when you need them. The more diverse and inclusive your network is, the more it can help, the more ideas you can get. You can get fresh ideas about theories that are happening, concepts, and emerging technology. You heard about how AI is getting applied. So if you want AI to be applied, catch hold of Sir, have a cup of coffee with him, so that the minute it goes onto Play Store, you're the first person in Kerala probably who can apply it and start using it. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Kaushik. I know you have a lot of out-of-the-box thoughts and ideas, and it's great to hear from you again. The airport story was also very interesting. Any comments, sir?
No, I think, we all live into one cloud, which has the opportunity to meet and interact with so many people, which may or may not be helpful in that instance, as you said. And they may be very helpful in odd hours, odd times, and it can be a really, sometimes life-saving also when you're stuck in some difficult situations. But as far as our practice is concerned, in a field of patient care where we interact with the people, I think networking is the most important part there, which will save you from all difficult situations. It may be a patient who's creating problem for you. It may be a patient's relatives creating problem for you. It may be medical legal case which is creating problem for you. And your entire hospital or your institutional work may get hampered. But if you have a networking, you can easily diffuse those difficult situations. I fully understand the younger generation are much more aware of these things. We never had those thoughts in our time, As you rightly said, it was difficult to ask a senior person to, be friendly with the juniors at those days. But things have changed so much now. I hope that people will understand and increase the networking. Good one.
Thank you, Dr. Kaushik. We now go on to the next talk, which is management of retinal detachment with large or multiple breaks from Dr. Raju.
Uh,
Very good morning. At the outset, I would like to thank the scientific committee at KSOS for giving me this opportunity. Respected chair, my dear teacher, Dr. JST sir. I will be speaking to you on management of retinal detachment in large breaks, mainly a retina topic. I will just share surgical videos. So sometimes we do get patients with retinal detachment with giant retinal tears. And here you can see this is a young lady who came with a retinal detachment with a large break. So these cases are actually challenging, and these cases are known for having redetachments. So doing the primary surgery in the best possible way will help us to get best results. And here you can see that I have injected PFCL to stabilize the retina, and the edges are being trimmed, and we are doing a good endo laser. The important thing in this to use all the equipment that are at our disposal, like using a chandelier and using PFCL. Here you can see that we are doing a PFCL silicone oil direct exchange. This is another patient who came with a post-trauma with a large break inferiorly. So I don't hesitate to put a buckle in these patients. This patient had a vitreous hemorrhage. We are inducing a PVD here. This is the most crucial step to do to remove the vitreous in a thorough fashion is very important. Here you can see a large break in the inferior quadrant in this patient. The edges were rolled up, we trimmed the edges, and after that we did a fluid air exchange, and the PFCL was there to stabilize the posterior port. So you can see how large the break, almost inferior quadrant, the patient is having a large break in this patient. So then after that the silicone oil was injected after doing a good laser. So it's important to see how the post-op is. This patient after the surgery, this is the post-op after oil removal. This patient maintains a 6/6 vision with that large break inferior. Some of the important steps here is to use chandelier and to do a self-indentation. Here you can see the indentation is done by myself during the surgery. So it gives you better control during the surgery. Doing a thorough laser is very important. This is another young patient who had come with a history of trauma, and this patient had a 6/6 vision with a nasal detachment with a large giant retinal dialysis in this patient. 6/6 vision, and you are operating on this patient is actually a stress. So very important to spend time during surgery, do a good PVD induction. So here you can see that I'm spending a lot of time to induce the PVD because it's a patient who is just 12 years old. It's very difficult to get the vitreous out. Then stabilize the posterior pole with the PFCL, then go about extending your PVD to the extremes. So all these things you have to do with patiently. Then you can see here I have stabilized the posterior pole. Then you can see the giant retinal dialysis that's there on the whole of the nasal side. So it was such a big dialysis. So important to trim the vitreous thoroughly. This is a patient is phakic, so I'm doing an indentation by myself so that I don't injure the lens. And very important to remove the vitreous around the tear where you have it. So this you'll have to do it, and again PFCL is very useful, and we are doing a laser under PFCL. Here you can see how well you can visualize and do the laser by doing a self-indentation under chandelier. So the chandelier is in place, and I am able to indent it myself and do the laser to the edge. This is at the ora serrata, and doing a cryo to the upper edge of this dialysis. And then we did a silicone oil PFCL direct exchange so that we avoid the slippage.
you can see the PFCL bubble being removed. So surgeon controlled biomanual PFCL silicone oil exchange has been done in this patient. And this is the patient, the same patient whom we are operated for giant retinal dialysis undergoing a silicone oil removal. This is at the time of silicone oil removal. This patient also continues to maintain a 6/6 vision after having done all these things, and patient didn't develop a cataract till now, luckily. This is another patient who came with a retinal detachment with large multiple breaks with rolled out edges, and you can see that the breaks were extending from 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock temporally, and they were rolled out. So large number of breaks, almost he had around 10 to 12 breaks all extending around the temporal region. So he had a very adherent vitreous, as I'll show you subsequently. Then I went ahead and removed all the circumferential adherent vitreous. We did diathermy to the tags of the tear, and then we went about and did it for all of the breaks, and the rolled edges were also diathermized. And then we converted actually this into a giant retinal tear, because there's no way you could settle this retina without releasing the traction that was there anteriorly. So we removed the whole thing. The anterior flap is now being removed. And all this while, the PFCL bubble helps us to stabilize the posterior pole. Then additional PFCL was injected, and endolaser to the margins of the break was done, and the surgery was completed by doing a PFCL silicone oil exchange. So here you can see that Chandler assisted bimanual surgeon controlled PFCL silicone oil exchange has been done. Removing the PFCL now. Make sure to have a look at the edges so that there is no slippage. The last part of the PFCL is out now. So this patient also did well, and all this was done without using a buckle, and this is at 2 weeks post-op, and this patient maintained a vision of 6/18 after silicone oil removal. So thank you very much. And surgical tips are, Chandler is very useful tool. Chandler assisted peripheral vitrectomy with surgeon indentation is safer and more controlled. PFCL is an indispensable third hand. Good laser is important. And in patients with multiple breaks with many quadrants, do not hesitate to use a band or a buckle. And for those of you, these videos have been shot on our system, the Sony mirrorless cameras, the commercial one, and we have validated the use of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Raju. It was wonderful, seeing your videos. So crisp, so sharp. Actually, we were discussing they were better than the entry segment visualization. I know that you are working on these devices for so many years and done a wonderful work. And the surgery looks so simple, by seeing these things. I remember my days where we could not see the retina properly, and now you've made so simple. I think that's a change which has happened. Yeah, Arvind?
Yeah, buckling is a last start in modern era, definitely yes. But you should learn that skill because it comes in handy sometimes. With advanced machines and advanced cutting techniques, definitely the vitrectomy is our first to go surgery. But you should know the skill of and art of buckling, especially for young patients. Yeah,
we are no more seeing such videos from our posterior segment surgeons.
Terrific. Thank you, Raju.
Thank you, Dr. Raju. I am not a retinal surgeon, but two things which is very prominent in is one is the use of the chandelier and the liberal use of PFCL. I think those two.
These were retinal detachments with large breaks. So that's why I said that it acts as a third hand to stabilize your retina when you are doing, and extremely helpful to remove the vitreous, which is the most crucial thing to do. Thank you, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dr. Raju Sampanki. We go on to the next talk by Dr. Manoj Mathur now. He'll be speaking on structural and functional correlation in glaucoma. Careful, sir. Careful, sir. That's not...
Compared to the high-tech talk of Dr. Raju, mine is a basic glaucoma talk, but very important, very vital concerning the diagnosis of glaucoma. I am Dr. Manoj Mathur. I shall be speaking about the structural and functional correlation in the diagnosis of glaucoma. So what are the practical pearls? Let us see about disc evaluation, structurally correlate with the OCT, functional correlation with the Humphrey field defects, and then we should understand that structural and functional correlation forms the cornerstone of glaucoma diagnosis. So if you see the disc, the moment you have a look at the disc sitting in your office or the chamber, the 7 important points that should come to your mind is the optic disc size, which is very vital, which I will elaborate in the next few slides, the optic cup, the neuroretinal rim, the vascular changes, hemorrhage of the optic disc, nerve fiber layer defect, and peripapillary atrophy or chorioretinal degeneration. If you see the first thing, the spot size of Welch-Allyn ophthalmoscope, the one you see on the left is a small disc, but the one on the right side is a large optic disc, and we know that 1.2 million axons pass through this neuroretinal rim. About the optic cup, we need to see that cup disc ratio, and we know that the vertical cup disc ratio is more important, and we have to see also the cup disc asymmetry between the two eyes. Now, when we see the 3 normal discs together, here we see the small disc, here we see the medium-sized disc, and here we see the large disc. What is seeing is the cup is very small here, the cup is 0.3 to 0.4 here, the cup is 0.7 on the right side. The lesson that we get from this is cup disc ratio varies with the size of the optic, size of the disc, and cup disc ratio on its own is not significant, which has turned the tables upside down to the teaching that we had 3 decades ago. So, a large cup can be normal for a large disc, and a small cup can be abnormal for a small disc. So what stands out is that the importance of neuroretinal rim, which is a surrogate for the optic disc. What is important is the neuroretinal rim, the health of the neuroretinal rim, which is to be pink or it is pale or whether it is a focal notch. What is also important is we need to see and follow the so-called isn't rule, subject to the caveat that the disc is not tilted, which states that the inferior neuroretinal rim should be thicker than the superior, which is thicker than the nasal, and which is thicker than the temporal. If a disc is following a isn't rule properly, in a non-tilted optic disc, it can be normal. So the vascular changes, we need to see the shift of the vessels, the bearing of the vessels, and the bayoneting of the vessels. And what is important is always look out for a optic disc hemorrhage and rule out a hemorrhage rather than expecting the hemorrhage to look at you. The nerve fiber layer defect can be visualized with the red free light, which is a dark wedge, touches the disc and pans out into the periphery. The peripapillary atrophy or chorioretinal degeneration, any PPA arising de novo, is pathognomic of glaucoma, and you must know that CR degeneration, chorioretinal degeneration, can interfere with the sensitivity of the retina. Coming to the structural correlation, the OCT, it is a combination of RNFL thickness and ONTL shape, increase that diagnostic power, and it can also, the GCC complex in an RT view printout can also corroborate the structural changes with the optic disc. Additional bonus with these machines are we can measure the CCT as also the angle scan. This is the RT view printout, and coming to the functional correlation, the visual field, the 8 components of visual fields, what we need to understand is don't look at the gray tone chart, look at the total deviation plot, then the pattern deviation plot. Here if you see, there is a dense diffuse suppression in the total deviation plot with all points normal in pattern deviation can be cataract, whereas a similar pattern of defect in total and pattern deviation can be pure glaucoma, and a combination, a total suppression in total deviation, when you separate out the diffuse suppression, focal glaucomatous defect popping out in the pattern deviation can be cataract plus glaucoma. Now, coming to the structural and functional correlation, here you see a large disc with a normal visual field with a large cup can be normal, it is not glaucoma. Here if you see, there is an inferior temporal notch which is manifesting as a focal defect in the superior nasal step in the visual field. Here if you see, there is superior excavation of the neuroretinal rim which is manifesting as a dense inferior arcuate defect. Here if you see, you have to distinguish between the color cup and the contour cup. Always look out for the dipping of the vessel. That is the take-home point, that this is a near total cup and not go by the color cup, which corroborates in C24-2 as a dense suppression. On 10-2 you need to follow up. And now coming to this, if you see a large disc with a temporal pallor, don't be surprised if you see a hemianopic defect. This is the other eye. So always whenever you see a bitemporal pallor, subject that patient to a visual field. Now if you see this defect, this disc, there is a inferior temporal thinning notch which is manifesting as a nasal RNFL defect also, and structurally, if you corroborate, there is an inferior temporal thinning in the RT view printout with a GCC thinning corresponding and correspondingly focal defect in the superior nasal step. This is an absolute structural and functional correlation that you need to document. If you see this disc here, there is a dense inferior rim excavation which is manifesting as a superior arcuate defect with a macular encroachment, and also there is a ST segment thinning which is manifesting as an focal defect in the inferior nasal step. Always, if you see this hemorrhage here, do a visual field. Visual field is normal, OCT is normal. Follow up this patient. Don't be surprised, after 3 months, I detected a focal defect in the inferior nasal step corresponding to the hemorrhage. So give due stress to the hemorrhage aspects. And last case, this I want to show, this was a 54-year-old male. I was new to the OCT. I was learning about OCT. So only the thing that I saw in this was a variation of 19 millimeters mercury pressure in the right eye compared to 14 in the left eye. I subjected this patient to visual field, absolutely normal. Then I did the OCT. At that time, in the left eye, I saw a superior temporal and inferior temporal defect. Oh, my ears got covered. And I re-looked at the thing. Then I started seeing some sort of a retinal nerve fiber layer defect up and down. I put the patient on treatment. So after some time, when I was training myself about this RTView machine, I came to know about the GCC significance. I called back the patient, I repeated the OCT. Now, earlier, the superior and inferior temporal segment, which is disappeared now. What does it mean? If you see, the centering here, the centering, it is slightly decentered. So this point was tested and that manifested as the superior and inferior temporal defect. Now if you see here, this is absolutely well-centered image, and that there is no ST and IT segment. So what is the lesson about OCT? That conclusion, imaging technologies do not confirm diagnosis by themselves. Imaging technologies are best only as complement the clinical judgment of the glaucomatologist, and structural and functional correlation by stereo photographs and visual fields is a vital tool. A good collaboration with the relevant imaging technology does act as a bonus. So this much is about the structural and functional correlation in glaucoma. I apologize for my voice today, since yesterday I am facing a bit of a problem. So thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mathur. And your point about disc hemorrhages are also very well taken. But occasionally we do see a disc hemorrhage along with PVD. You know, not very common. Of course, the general dictum stands that when you see a disc hemorrhage, always rule out glaucoma and keep the patient under follow-up. Thank you so much for that talk. I now call upon Dr. Sanjeev Srinivas to speak on corneal cross-linking, the current understanding.
The outset, on behalf of Dr. Srinivas, I'd like to apologize. He couldn't be here today due to illness, so I'll be covering for him. So we're talking about cross-linking. It's a very common subject. It's done everywhere, and recently there's hotspots developing all over the world, especially in the Middle East and in India, of keratoconus. So what do we know? So it was described in 1854, and we are here today. So in terms of etiology, there's a bit of genetics, but nothing is concrete. We also have the environment. These are known factors, so allergy, atopy, eye rubbing, as well as a family history. There are a host of connective tissue disorders which can cause it, and there are known ocular disease associations as well. Now, we know it's a disease of the epithelium and the anterior stroma, which causes enzymatic degradation of the same. So that in turn alters the biomechanics, and finally you end up with both inflammatory and sometimes even non-inflammatory changes. Now, if diagnosed early, there are a multitude of treatment options. You can put them on optical aids, you can give them spectacle correction, you can even put them on specialty contact lenses. But when you want to preserve the shape in this state, you always go to cross-linking. You can even consider tissue augmentation, but at the end of it, you still have to cross-link the tissue in order to keep it stable for the long term. Now, if you want to improve the shape surgically, you can consider intrastromal devices or even excimer laser ablation. But even at the end of all this, you will still need to do a cross-linking, no matter what. Lastly, for the advanced cones, you have penetrating keratoplasty, you have lamellar dalks, and obviously you have to deal with hydrops management as well. Now, keratoconus as a disease has an onset at 4 years, goes up to 50 years, but we all know that it stalls or sort of stops progressing at the age of 35 plus. So these are my paradigms. So when you see an early cone with good best corrected visual acuity, if the patient's young, you've documented progression, you can go ahead and cross-link. If the patient is older, you can actually hold back, wait and watch, see if it progresses, and then decide on a cross-linking later. Whereas if you have a moderate cone with a poor BCAVA, then you give the patient a trial of contact lenses, and if the patient is then young, and you've documented progression, you cross-link them, and then you again choose to give them a contact lens later on. The same holds good for an older patient as well. You just hold off on the cross-linking and fit them with a contact lens. Whereas if you have a very advanced cone, you're left with no other options other than to do a DAG or a PK. Now, contact lens has been an accepted modality to sort of maintain the status quo of the cornea. It's been well documented over the years. Whereas your tectonic surgeries, you have DALC, which sort of preserves the host endothelium, theoretically lowering the risk of rejection. But then PK2 has good 10-year outcomes in keratoconics. CXL as such is a conservative and safe approach, whereas you do a transplant only when nothing else is possible. And even if you choose to do any of the newer procedures that improve the shape, you will still need to cross-link at the end of the day. And their predictability, safety and reversibility is still yet to be validated in the long term. Now, to understand cross-linking, you need to look at the corneal structure. So the corneal structure as such is basically a triple helical tropocollagen with interpeptide hydrogen bonds. The collagen fibers are arranged in a parallel alignment with a hexagonal lattice-like lamellae, comprising mainly of glycosaminoglycans. Now, cross-linking occurs mainly via two mechanisms. You have the type 1 and you have the type 2. The type 1 is the anaerobic mechanism, which we do not want because that results in scarring and haze. The type 2 is what we want. Now, cross-linking, this has been the standard for years. It's basically vitamin B2 riboflavin. It's available in concentration with dextran. So for isotonic, we use isotonic when we have a pachymetry of above 400. Hypotonic now is on the way out. Basically, we've seldom ever used it now that we have the sub 400 protocol from Professor Farhad Hafezi. And also we do have epi-on cross-linking as well and contact lens assisted cross-linking as well. So for cross-linking, the procedure in itself, you deliver UV light at a wavelength of say 370 nanometers. It's delivered at 5.4 joules per centimeter square. You have both the classic and the accelerated protocols. we use accelerated more often nowadays, but classic still works, especially when you have recurrent cases which you're trying to cross-link for a second time around. Now, cross-linking can be done epithelial on, epithelium off, but it is at the end of the day a sterile procedure done in the OT. You do it under topical anesthesia, under antibiotic coverage. So I prefer to patch them every day until epithelialization occurs, but you can also put in a BCL. Now, post-operative follow-up, you keep them on antibiotics for at least a week. You give them an ointment to stabilize the surface and tear substitutes to lubricate, of course, and you give them soft steroids. And if you have this lurking underneath the lids, you choose to treat this first before you touch the cornea in any way. Now, the complications. Now, despite having done a good cross-linking, you can still have progression. You can have corneal haze. You can have endothelial damage. You can even have infections. Sometimes the cross-linking works, but the cornea continues to progressively flatten, thereby decreasing the corrected visual acuity. You can even have corneal collagen destabilization, resulting in stromal sclerosis as a late onset complication as well. These are some of the newer kids on the block. So basically, you have pulsed UV delivery that sort of overcomes the oxygen depletion that occurs with accelerated C3R. You have PACE, which is basically PTK-assisted, customized Epi-on CXL, again from Professor Farhad FAC. We'll have the results of that probably next year. You have LASIK Extra, and then you have stromal pocket CXL. But none of these procedures have any long-term results or surveys done yet. So at the end of it, I thought I'll leave you with a clinical tidbit. So this, of course, is it's nothing. It's a flesher ring. It's a complete flesher ring that you see. But before you cross-link such a patient, make sure you examine him thoroughly, because you could have missed something like this. So this is basically keratoconus in a post-LASIK eye, in which case you have to actually cross-link within the flap and not outside it to avoid the risk of a flap melt. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. I think it is a nice overview on a cross-linking in today's scenario. Looking back into the entire gamut of treatment of ectatic disorders, keratoconus is one of the leading ectasia which we have been handling for so many years. I rightly pointed out, India is one of the topmost country where we get these disorders. But looking back for last now almost 1.5 or 2 decades, the need of keratoplasty has come down in keratoconus, mainly because of cross-linking has become the norms for management of early keratoconus. And that has really changed the concept of rehabilitation of people with keratoconus. The only thing which is to be understood is, if you have a patient who is at mid-20s, you need to establish the progression of disease before you go for a cross-linking. If you have a patient which is less than 18 years, younger patient, their cross-linking may be done as soon as possible. Sometimes we don't wait for a checking for progression in these cases. As rightly pointed out, complications do happen in these treatments also, especially in compromised situations. And especially like an infection, if it happens, it can be devastating in a keratoconus eye. And entire vision can be lost sometimes. But if done meticulously, it has a very good results. And I know that many people will be off for contact lenses. If they have been difficult fitting contact lens, they will be suitable for contact lens subsequently. And long-term results have been reasonably, remarkably well for these group of patients. I think that has really been we are talking about innovations in this. I think this is the greatest innovation in the field of corneal treatment in the last 2 decades. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We had a very nice session. I thank Dr. J.S. Tithial for his presence and comments for the various topics. Thank you very much. We conclude this session.